And John Hammond Jr. came to Jimmy, and they played together. And John Hammond Sr., who of course discovered Billie Holiday and stuff, came by to see Jimmy. I mean, he was really getting thing, but the acme of his experience in MacDougal Street was when he played with Johnny Hammond, and then Dylan came and they went and had a drink at the Kettle of Fish, and they got drunk. And that was like,
that was a big thing for him.
Yes, and so he, of course, All Along the Watchtower is a huge hit, and Dylan and everyone loved him for that. And then he did Call Out My Window too, which is not so well known, but a great version as well.
Right. Now, also, he was the Beatles were big fans. Paul McCartney was a big fan of Hendrix, and when he played a big show in London, he actually opened up the show with Sgt. Pepper's.
Before when this came out.
Yes.
So that was a big deal, and I think Brian Epstein had organized this concert with Hendrix and the Who, and so he opened up by playing the Sgt. Pepper, which they loved, and he has a great...
And they were all there, all the Beatles were in the audience, and everybody was in the audience for this big show.
And it's a great version, and it's available, you can hear it, and it's a wonderful version.
Right. Now let's talk a little bit about the
controversy.
And then
Brian Epstein gave a dinner for him.
Yeah.
Afterwards.
Let's talk a little bit about the controversy around his death, because you have a theory, and other people have theories, so... Talk a little bit about yours and then respond to other people's.
All right. First to say he died, for folks who might have been on another planet or never heard the story, he died in 1970. He was Jimi Hendrix was just 27 years old. Claims were made at the time in the newspaper, and it's sort of repeated that he died of a drug overdose. We don't really know. Actually, there's quite a lot of mystery, and as far as I know, the inquest, as I'm sure you're going to say, is messy. There was just a whole mess in the investigation, and there's a lot of mystery still in the story.
I guess what Christie might call the mystery of, Sherlock Holmes. The British, who are known for their mysteries, they sure created one with that inquest because they didn't call any witnesses. They relied on Monica Danneman, a witness who her English was not that good.
And she was from Scandinavia, Monica.
Germany.
Monica Danneman.
Yeah. And they interviewed his equipment manager, and that was it. They opened and shut, but strangely enough, the coroner did not sign the death certificate. And it was an open verdict, which means, according to New York Times, that they did not know the cause of death. But it was floated, and we know about this kind of disinformation campaign, that he had died of a drug overdose. And then the coroner said he died of barbiturate intoxication and strangulation on his own vomit. But they didn't call the doctors who examined him and pronounced him dead at St. Mary Abbott's Hospital, and they didn't call the ambulance drivers who had discovered his body. There was no one else there, although this woman had said she was there with him and rode in the ambulance and just...
Monica Danneman.
Yeah, and the
she claimed that he was still alive when they loaded him into the ambulance.
Yes, and that she was there with him, and she was saying this and that, and they said...
Do you believe any of those stories?
Well, the ambulance drivers themselves said when they got there, he was alone.
Yeah.
And they didn't know who he was. And so they had to call the cops. And the cops don't get called unless they can't identify the person. And they said, and these guys, they're not doctors, but they said they could tell, because, ambulance, they do this all the time.
Right.
They said he was dead when they got there.
Oh, dear.
And they took him to the hospital, and it took them a while, and they tried to resuscitate him, as they say, but the doctors pronounced him dead at noon. And, of course, and she said she had called them at 11 o'clock, but she had called the ambulance at 11 o'clock, but Eric Burden and others said that she had called them at 7 o'clock in the morning or thereabouts, and was afraid that that he would be mad at her, blah, 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 a scandal.
Right.
So there's a lot of controversy.
The background, I've heard a lot of stories about Jimi Hendrix and drug use. We know he took LSD. He was dosed with
rock
LSD.
musicians don't take any drugs.
Right, He smoked pot. He had a few drinks.
Hippies.
He was from the South. He was Seattle, but he lived in the South and was in the Army, so he drank. Had a few drinks.
He drank. He wasn't a drinker. He drank a little white wine.
A little white wine. That's it.
Because he couldn't handle it.
Okay.
He was
smoked cigarettes.
He smoked cigarettes. Yeah.
But did he do heroin?
Well, you remember there was this famous book from the Rolling Stones with Tony Sanchez. We talked about how the Rolling Stones they were so steeped in heroin that they would get their blood taken out and retransfused.
Trying to live down that story. They're still trying to live down that story. That's like, excuse me while I kiss the
sky. But I think that these guys, they're a little bit of everything. But
it was an experimental age.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
that's definitely.
but
Right.
if you can, but most rock guys, if you're playing a tour, for instance, you know, they take, you know, just like in the armed forces today, if you're in Iraq, before you go on a mission, they give you a little speed,
Right.
right?
Stay away.
Which is supposed to be standard, you know, operating procedure. So, I mean, but he wasn't a drug addict, but everyone in the business took something
Yeah.
at some point, and it's just, and we, it's
Well,
just,
how about barbiturates? That's a strange drug to overdose on, especially when you have so many possibilities. You know, what I just didn't understand that. Was
Well,
he
he-
taking
it-
sleeping
because
pills?
it
I mean, how
wasn't
many
a-
sleeping pills could you take? I mean,
it
usually-
wasn't an overdose.
Yeah.
So what do you think
There was,
happened?
well, the doctor said he drowned. He was drowned, and of course, just look at the body.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people say this and say that. When you look at the body, he was fully clothed, which means that he was not bedded down, unless somebody dressed him, which is absurd. And he was covered in vomit and red wine, covered in wine to the point where the doctor said he was drowned by the wine because, as they point out, his blood alcohol level was not
Right.
high enough to indicate that he had drank all this wine. You know, because if you drink all the
Right.
wine,
Yeah.
like who would drink wine to the point where they drown themselves?
Right.
I mean, that's
So
a,
I've never
somebody
heard of
did
such a
this
thing.
to him?
well, no, that's never happened. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You know, so
They're saying that he was. So I've heard it said that that he was. If you pass out and you're face up and you vomit, the vomit can fall back down into your windpipe.
that's what Monica Danneman said. But the ambulance driver said, first of all, that they had him sitting up.
Uh-huh.
And so forth and so on. You know, but so he didn't have a chance. But when he was in bed, this is when that woman supposedly was with him.
Oh, yeah.
And who knows whether he was in bed or not? That's
Right.
what she said. Whether he was lying down or standing up, no one knows because she's dead, and she told many different
Right.
stories.
Versions.
Right.
And
So
one
nobody
story-
really knows what happened.
One story she said that he was killed.
Right.
told
That's
one
what I was
person he
going
was
to ask
killed.
you,
Isn't her
if you
boy-
thought
her-
he'd been murdered
Yeah.
or something.
She's dead. Monica Danneman, by the way, committed suicide some years ago by jumping out of the Chelsea Hotel.
No, that was
dear.
Devin Wilson.
Oh, Devin Wilson. Okay,
Oh,
thank you for
Danneman.
correcting me.
Danneman was found dead in her Mercedes in London
Oh.
with a hose going from her exhaust pipe
Oh, my
through
God.
the window.
So I knew there was
After
a
she lost a
mysterious
lawsuit
Okay. that's
Because
it.
Tassie Effingham reopened the inquest, and that's where a lot of this information came
Right,
from, because
okay.
the Crown had to investigate
Mm-hmm.
to see if they wanted to reopen the inquest. And guess if they reopened it or
No,
not.
they did not. No, I don't think they did.
The Crown decided
So
not
what
to
do you
it.
think? We only have 1 minute left.
Oh, that's all?
Yes. Well, we're talking to David Henderson,
Fast.
the author of Excuse Me
Who
While
you
I
have
Kiss
in
the
front?
Sky, Voodoo Jimi Hendrix,
Excuse me.
Voodoo Child.
Oh,
This
yeah.
is the book here.
Oh, that looks great.
And do you have a website?
No, but
you can find
Simon,
it.
Just find it.
Simon and Schuster.
Yeah, just
Atria
publisher.
Books.
Yeah. And you
Atria
can just
book.
type this in, Excuse Me While I Kiss the Sky, pops right up all the information
Yeah.
you need to get the book. And it looks like it'll probably be
Jimi Hendrix with a
all
child.
over the place in bookstores.
And we'll
what
have
have
to
you.
Wasn't
have
it
you
a-
on another time to talk
Oh,
about
yeah.
your own poetry.
Oh, I'd
So
love
let me-
to.
last
Really
question.
fun.
They did a beautiful
Did,
job.
do you think Jimi Hendrix was murdered? And by who?
You know, I just want to point out that what people, the common perception was not true. And that it looks like there's ample reason to believe that there was foul play. I just don't want, you see, I personally don't want to say, oh, he died beautiful, a beautiful blonde, you know, and he was cool in bed and it's an accident. No, he died in a difficult situation, under duress. And that's,
Thank you, David
Sorry, I
Henderson.
didn't hear that, though.
We'll
No,
see you
I
next
am
week.
too.